Sorry, my network had gotten like a cringe, but I hope you can hear me. We should be able to start. First speaker, you can.
Can I confirm my
First
audibility?
speaker, are you ready?
Am I audible? Yes.
The first speaker of the debate, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Am I audible?
I think you're audible. Let's start.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to set my timer. And
Yeah,
how many minutes of speech again?
let's use 7 as usual.
7. Okay.
Let's get used because in the trials you guys are going to be using 8, unless otherwise we'll use standard time. 8 minutes. But now let's
All right.
7.
Cool. 7. Let me set my timer.
And you're live on YouTube, so guys, I hope you can refer to those 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 videos online to be quite helpful. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can proceed kindly.
Okay. I'm going to start now. Go. Chair. In historic books, usage of democratized spiked in 1981, while World War ended and countries were becoming democracies, causing realization of inclusivity and usage of democratic power back in the days. In today's motion that states that this House supports the democratization of companies, we Affirmative are proud to propose. So first thing first, in my speech, I'm going to show you how democratization of companies actually looks like, what it's characterized of, but then go ahead and show you as to why we clearly support the democratization of such companies. First and foremost, how does democratization of these companies actually look like, right? This is where these companies have the whole idea of more inclusivity and participating and like engaging people to actually participate in their decision making within the organizations. And what are these companies actually consisted of? Yeah, these are employees, these are workers like managers, board of governors, etc, etc. So with the whole idea of democratization is where we uphold the whole principle of democracy in order to build a just and fair system. But in the vast majority of instances, we see that companies have a great influence. Like, for example, i.e., we see that companies actually take the whole idea of how they're going to actually sell goods, probably even how they're supposed to influence the people outside there. For example, we have Google, a very big, like one of the biggest tech companies across the globe, right? It has great influence, i.e., it's the one that actually like probably decides on what consumers are going to get, or even what its workers are going to actually have. So with such companies, these are companies characterized that they have actually strong ties with government, right? Since this government and these companies actually collide together and probably have this whole understanding, we see that there's going to be more pressure or coverage that is being done over the workers in this workforce. So at a point in time, we all have this idea of misrepresenting opinions and the employees in the workforce. So with the whole idea that I clearly paint you that why these companies actually have this pressure or coverage over these people, we'll see that they have this great or massive influence of people, choices, lifestyle, salary, etc. This means that power and democracy exists, and then what is going to happen is that there's going to be a great ground for misrepresentation. So what do we understand in today's debate? In the current status quo, we see that if a company actually has maybe wants a location, for example, and like for a school, right? With the thing I tell you that these companies have good connections with the government, this is going to happen is that these companies are going to go ahead straight straight up and then take away this school. Why? Because they already have this connection. And I think, as I said, they have the great influence and power in order to take decisions. And with this, employees or these workers are actually not in, and are literally not considered. So once these companies or like these companies take such decisions, and who takes these decisions is basically the people at the top. So that is how these companies actually work. And from there, I even tell you what this democratization of this company actually looks like. So, as Team Affirmative, why do we think we support the democratization of these companies? In order to solve this whole idea of great influence of these companies on these workers, and nevertheless, all this misrepresentation, why do we think we support the democratization of companies? We come to the democratization involves the whole idea of inclusivity in decision making within the organization. We tell you that the organization or these companies actually have workers and employees who work 24/7 in these institutions. So, in order to have this just and uphold these democratic principles, what is there? First, I'll take you later. First, we have to understand that as from our side as Team Affirmative, we uphold inclusivity and decision making. What is this? What does this mean? It means that employees are able to actually go ahead and air out their views, and nevertheless, they're able to actually go ahead and take and make decisions like prior with that with a board, right? It does not mean that employees are going to have their own stand and literally probably object whatever they're going to say. I'm going to take you later. So it means that these employees are able to have this wider perspective. I mean, if you have a decision done by 3 members and then a decision by 10 members, it means that there's going to be a wide perspective, and you will even have better judgments throughout your company. So with such inclusivity and decision making that involves the whole idea of wide perspective that is got from these people, it means that there's going to be a whole representation in the company. And once there is representation in the company, it means that these people are actually incentivized to keep on working, to keep on actually bringing more sustainability in the company. So with the whole idea of inclusivity and decision making under these companies under this democratization of companies, we see there's going to be efficiency in the decisions because each and everyone has actually been included. But then secondly, we go ahead to empower we go ahead to actually achieve employee empowerment. And how is this? We need workers to go ahead and participate in order to ensure their ability to their interests. What does that mean? Take a step in my first speech that these employees literally the ones the wide workforce, right? And this is who actually keep on working their options. What does that mean? Right? That we have to understand their interest. I mean, she's probably the type, is probably the one that are big like putting lots of work in them, or is it like the salary issues they have? Literally each and everything has to be put into consideration. And nevertheless, these big people go ahead to these big people actually go ahead to make policies. As I said, these are companies that have the great influence and power in order to change each and everything they want. So at a point in time, if there is a position or a time whereby these people go ahead to produce, or I can say to make fair policies, who is going to actually question them? These employees are going to question them. Why? Because we have given them that platform, and there is this whole idea of people can actually air out their words, they can actually have a voice, and at a point in time, these people are able to fair practices. So with this, they're able to address their issues. And what do we get at the end of the day? The employees are actually empowered. And then secondly, there is smooth run of employees. Why? Because there's not going to be backlash to the managers. And at the end of the day, even the customer is actually satisfied, and more analysis is going to be given in my second speech. And therefore, Chair, from our world, we show there's going to be more of democratic principles being upheld. We will clearly show you there's going to be more of employee empowerment. There's going to be more of customer satisfaction and inclusivity, since each and everyone actually engages in the process. And with that, we clearly show you as to why we support the democratization of companies, and opposition has to come and show us as to why they don't think democratization of companies is actually the best way, and clearly show us that even though we democratize these companies, things are going to actually happen. And yeah, I'd like to rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's run direct to this first opposition speaker. Thank you.
Okay. Am I audible enough?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Let me set my timer and I'll start. So I'll start my speech in 3, 1. Panel. Understand one thing that proposition clearly fails to characterize in today's debate. First of all, today's resolution is a comparative one to show us as to what we achieve when we actually democratize these companies or what we don't achieve when we actually do not do that. But then I'm going to do a bit of characterization. One, understand that what are these companies that have actually not democratized or companies that have democratized? Companies that have not democratized look like the Apple company, Toyota, Amazon, Walmart. These are companies that are like literally leading on the world market. But then secondly, what do we see? What is the main goal of these companies? The main goal of these companies is to maximize profits, to increase on their market share, and lastly, sustainability. What goal then do we achieve from opposition's case? From opposition's case, our main goal is to promote this sort of sustainability of these companies and as well as promote productivity from the end of the companies. Why then do we say that we should not actually democratize these companies? First off, I'm going to do a bit of rebuttal. See, what do we get from proposition's case? Proposition's case come in and tell us that they are going to actually promote more inclusivity and engagement. But from our case, what do we tell you? We look at a world whereby business is done faster and easier. We're not against the opinions, but rather we say that this should be done through this sort of hierarchy, right? But then secondly, we are not against the experience that they tell us that these people actually should sort of have, but rather we are saying this should be done through structure. So inclusivity and engagement is more actually like sort of achieved from our world. I'm going to show you that in my speech. But then secondly, they tell us that there is misrepresentation of workers in this company. That is why for so long enough, companies have actually something called the CEO, the PM, and all that stuff. These people represent the interests of these people. What then do we tell you from opposition? We are not saying that actually these CEOs and all that stuff or the board of governors should actually make their their decision and it stops there, but rather they should go be accountable for the decisions that they have made, hold a meeting, and then tell the employers and agree on everything. But after the decision has been made. But then lastly, they come in and tell us that there is actually employee empowerment. But then this doesn't work in their case in itself. Why then does this not work? See, already employees have a work that they have to do, a burden. For example, if I'm supposed to actually be like typing my papers and all that stuff, that's my burden. But by the time that every decision that this company has to keep on making, you're going to keep on calling me and telling me that actually, come, we make this. So meaning that actually you're making more burden, you're not developing them, but rather adding a backlog on what they have. So there's no sort of employee empowerment from the end of their of their house, right? And then lastly, they tell us that there is backlash from the employee. There's no way there is going to be backlash if everyone agrees to the hierarchy that has been organized in the company. And at the end of the day, we look at companies actually maximizing profits and the long-term success of these companies, not rather having a sort of an inclusive world and the business is going to fail. Back to their case. See, Chair, understand that even though we take them at their best case, these are the problems that rise from democratization of these companies. One, there's going to be decision making is going to be slow. What happens then? See, these companies compete in the world market. For example, look at Apple companies, right? If they have to produce iPhone 15, if it's the one that is on market, then an employee says, no, we must actually first produce iPhone 13 or iPhone 12. There's going to be decision making being slowed. But then secondly, there's lack of accountability from their end of the house. How then does this, I'm not taking any PR, there is lack of accountability that comes from their end of the house. What then does this look like? This looks like everyone is going to play the blame game and saying, no, it's not me who actually made this decision. When that decision actually fails, then everyone is going to play the blame game. So meaning there is no way that company is going to move forward. But then thirdly, also, there is the conflicting interest that is going to be raised from their house. What then does this look like? If 10 employees say that, no, we should take this, and 5 say we should take this, still, at the end of that day, these people are going to have conflicting interests and they're not going to come to a conclusion, meaning that they're going to delay, yet they have to compete in the world market. And lastly, there's going to be this organization alignment, which is hard from their end of the house, meaning that this is something that cannot take place in this democratization of companies. Back to our case. Then why do we prefer that a house whereby hierarchy is actually promoted? And we have seen that companies like the Walmart, Toyota, and Amazon have actually sustained themselves and are competing in the world market. One, efficiency and decision making. This is made faster because people are going to actually respond to them to the world market very fast, and this is going to keep the company actually like competing in the world market, meaning this company is able to keep on running. But then how do we say that accountability and transparency is going to be promoted in our world of hierarchy when these decisions are made by these people who are the board of governors? They're going to go back to these employees and actually tell them what decision they made, and they're going to agree, so everyone actually knows that they did this and this, and at the end of the day, these CEOs and all that stuff are held accountable for the decisions that they make. So therefore our system is actually efficient. But then secondly, what do we tell you? This is like a form of strategic direction that these people actually use to promote, to like make this company move very fast and actually like promote this sort of inclusivity in itself. How then does this come? This looks like there is not going to be any form of division or any form of people like all falling apart and all that stuff. Look at a scenario whereby you have a family member saying make this decision, but another saying that no, we have to make this decision. What happens in the long run is there's going to be sort of division, and in a world for so long we have seen where there is division, there is no moving forward, there is no growth. So meaning these companies are not going to develop, these companies are not going to excel in the long run. One of the goals that we look at is sustainability and productivity from the end of our world. But then in a point whereby you're even like empowering employees, because everyone is them and they later come to know of the decision that was made by the board of governors, then this is what we call empowerment, not what proposition actually comes in and tells you that everyone has to actually be included. See, proposition has clearly come in and told us that they want to actually promote this inclusivity and everyone participating. But at what rate is that? Even though we take them at their best case and say that everyone needs to participate, in itself, this is something that cannot be achieved, or this is something that companies cannot take in, and this is why the most leading companies for so long have refused this, and they will keep on refusing because of the impacts that come after when they take in this. But then remember that even in itself of this point of inclusivity, people are being represented by these people that they have actually voted, like these people that have actually
Time,
voted to be.
please. Thank you so much. We must keep in mind we have 7 minutes of speech, and let's roll to our second affirmative speaker. Thank you.
Can I confirm audibility?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me set my timer. Okay, well, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Tano, I think the entire case of opposition is built on a foundation of lack of information and awareness and understanding what democratization in itself looks like. They give us big companies and tell us that, look, these companies have not used democratization, but I'm going to disprove this, and this will entirely take their case down because they entirely give us fallacies. Tano, understand that the Amazon itself is known for embracing elements of democratization in its operations. They have implemented various mechanisms to encourage the employee input and involvement in decision process. For example, they came up with an initiative and an idea of working backwards, where they used to include all their employees in making decisions on product shape and even the kinds of services that they are supposed to actually provide, with even creation of internal communication platforms where these employees actually are given an opportunity to share the kind of feedback that they actually present. All these panel at the end of the day are ideas attached to democratization. Two worlds, a world that fronts ideas of democratization being included in a system of a company, in seeing who best actually attains the goals of a company, and a world whereby democratization is actually not considered or given any room. So we think whatsoever looks like democratization in itself in an organization structure cannot be on the side of opposition. What does opposition actually look like? Or a world whereby we actually promote this kind of system? Two things. First of all, the top organization relies on its ideas without going back to ask anything from the workers. But even second, they just rely on what they think is actually right when practically it might not actually be true. So we think this is the kind of system that the world looks like when it actually has not been able to include ideas of democratization in its system. Whereas in our world, we have a world whereby there is clear communication set up in an organization, training and skills developed for the groups of people that actually exist within a kind of organization in order to see how actually the main aims of companies can be achieved. Anyway, what are the main aims that companies hold? First of all, profitability. Second, growth and expansion. Third, customer satisfaction. Fourth, innovation and adaptability. But fifth, employee management and adaptability. But even sixth, employee engagement and development, where they actually aim to see that these can actually be achieved, though they may vary from company to company. Position, we tell you that in our world, we prefer a system of decision making. What do they actually interpret our kind of decision making? They think that when you are actually working on the company's computer or something of that kind, and you're requested to give your opinion, then you will need 200 hours to actually give an idea. This kind of system that actually create an actual idea that is particularly true.
You
So
are a speaker on the floor.
actually give I will not take you kind of either. We think this
Your speaker on the floor. You
hours
on
and
the
hours to actually be in this kind of system. So we think the kind of idea they try to interpret looks more of a world that is actually not true. We think also opposition builds a world on fallacies. Apple has used democratization for long, including workers in its system. So we think we cannot actually side with a world that does not differentiate companies that actually use this kind of system and those that do not actually use it. So we think in this debate, either way, opposition cannot actually win this debate. I'm going to take you through an idea of transparency and accountability and play it in our favor. Understand, panel, that in a world whereby people have actually been included in that kind of system or existing kind of system, we are able to achieve transparency and accountability. How is this actually achievable? Accountability within a company by involving a wide range of individuals in decision making processes, workers have like a greater ground of actually being able to know how they can actually be able to achieve some kinds of things or goals that they actually said simply because they have that kind of burden that they are included in making decisions. Therefore, they have more prevalence in working to ensure that these can actually be achieved. While opposition makes an assumption that look, these people would care less and all they would blame them. We think ideally that's not true because people are already feeling in this kind of system, and therefore they will have more of a wider space of actually having to achieve this. The culture of accountability, therefore, is taken up and produced more on a wider scale in our world than what they think in their world. They tell us that
Anyone from opposition bench, let us know if second opposition speaker is going to be around or any of you is willing to iron man.
Yeah, our second speaker is going to be around. He just has a slight issue with his connection, but he's going to be around shortly, as soon as possible, in fact.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can.
All right, I'm really sorry about this. My power just left for an instant. Okay, can I start my speech?
Yeah, strictly 7 minutes. Thank you.
All right, I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, Pano, for my speech, I'm just going to do two things. I'm going to do a bit of engagement on a few things brought by government, and I give you the positive matter that opposition brings, and I just do a comparison to show you why we. So government brings the case. It tells us that first of all, we believe that debate is left at the bare minimum when government then tells us the extent or a clear picture of how this democratization looks in companies. But since the debate has really progressed, as opposition, we take it through each now everybody, if not the vast majority of people, have the same access or the same level of participation in democracy. So we get a few things from government. They tell us that, it's not going to lead to things like time wastage because it's just giving ideas. This was brought about by the current speaker. But we are telling you, Pano, how it looks like to actually participate in things like decision-making processes. It means that people are going to have to do things like call for board meetings to sit down and organize to bring about decisions of the people. What this then happens is that the majority of employees who are at the bottom chain are going to now move from wherever they are doing, whatever they are doing, and now come to sit together and formulate policies. A few things we bring on as opposition in today's debate. Firstly, on context, I'm going to give you 3 layers of context. Firstly, on democracy. I feel like when we talk about democracy, one of the principles we must accept is that democracy stands for the majority have their way and the minority have their say. Now, the problem with democratization of companies is that in the vast majority of cases, if you look at the nature of these companies, it's that the people at the top are most cases the people who are more experienced and more skilled than the people at the bottom. So in the case where you're going to give more people, let's say you're going to broaden the scale of participation, it means you're going to give a chance to people who are in most cases less experienced than the people at the top to have an equal say, because this is democracy, to have an equal power in the contribution of the process. What it then means is that you're going to increase the risk of bad decision making, because we know in democracy, the case where the case where more people who are experienced rejected. The case where people who are more inexperienced outnumber the top people, it means that the policies are going to be made favoring the people at the bottom, which means that chances of risky decisions or inexperienced decisions are going to increase on their side. But secondly, when we tell you about metric of context on these businesses, we come and tell you that these businesses are organizations which seek to actually bring about maximization of profits. This came out in our first speech. So in the case where we have our worst case scenario by opposition, that is to say maybe there's some kind of abuse of power, let's say there's some kind of manipulation, which government tries to paint, we still give you 3 metrics. We tell you firstly, in the case where these governments seek to ensure maximization of profit, it means that they want to ensure that the service delivery or the process is as smooth and as clear as possible. Even in the case where there's someone who is embezzling funds in, let's say, the top, it means that the people will still be incentivized to remove him because they want to maximize profits. Because if he's removed, then they'll get more money, and everyone wants more money. But even secondly, what we are then telling you as democratization in this particular debate is we are telling you that we do not restrict the people to actually have their own will, right? In the case where they have no power to report, they can still do other things like, let's say, we to the government in case there are things like manipulation. They can still do things like, let's say, push the media, because you know that companies in and of themselves are things that depend on things like reputation, right? So in the case where the reputation is being tainted, they'll move for the better. So what we are then opposing as opposition in today's debate is for the people to have the capability to directly and actively participate in the decision making of policies. But even thirdly, When we come and tell you that as opposition in today's debate, we reject democracy, we give you an argumentation. We give you a few layers, which I'm going to add a bit of an extension in my speech. But even so, firstly, when we come and tell you that people at the, when you come and tell us that people at the bottom are also going to be allowed to participate in the democratic in the making of policies, we tell you a few things. Firstly, there's a high risk of manipulation. How does this look like? Going to have a person who is doing manual labor at the bottom, going to have the same say as a person at the top who is going to say a CEO. That power balance is too great, which means in the vast majority of cases, we can have things like, let's say the rich guy is manipulating the poor people because he has the financial power to do so. He can manipulate the majority of the people at the bottom to vote policies that favor him. But even secondly, we come and tell you that even in the case where even in the case of things like confidentiality, when we come and tell you that when you include more people in that, let's say the decision making of policies, you're going to give a high risk to reduce things like the confidentiality of the company. Things like company secrets, company plans, secret, let's say products that are coming out are going to be at more risk to get out of the company, go to things like competitors, which means the companies themselves are going to lose because the information is being leaked. But even thirdly, this one is very key and which I feel like you should take note of. On the complexity of business and experience, we come and tell you, we support as opposition in our stance the hierarchy that currently exists in the status quo for one reason. Firstly, if you look at business as itself, the people at the top are there mostly because they have the education, but also because they have things like the experience. What that then means is that if you are to include more people at the bottom who have less experience and less knowledge of things like the complexity of business, it then means that you're going to increase the risk of people making poor decisions, because the people at the bottom aren't at the top for a reason. They lack the experience and they lack the necessary expertise and education to get forth. So if you do a bit of a comparative analysis, I'm going to run two metrics of comparison. Firstly, on likelihood, government gives us a case where they come and tell us that we want to give more democratic powers to the people, to include more decision making and better policies. We come and tell you, even if that is the case, the likelihood better decision making is going to be less because of the metrics we gave you. We gave you disorder, we gave you time wastage, we gave you no accountability. The likelihood of decisions coming out in your side is going to be significantly less. And if the likelihood is less, it means that the impact that you're going to bring about on your side as government is going to be less. But as opposition, we tell you one thing: we support the hierarchy of the system that exists in the current status quo. And even if government is to come and tell us that there's going to be the downer people have no power, we come and tell you, in the case of systems like hierarchy, we still have people at the top who represent the views of people at the bottom, which means in and of itself, the people will still be able to air out their views, and the people at the top will use that information, using their experience, using their expertise to make companies that best suit to make decisions, that best suit the companies. So in our side as opposition, the likelihood of good decisions coming up is going to be significantly better. And if the likelihood is better, it means the impact you're going to bring about is better. But even on our second metric of comparison, in terms of general utility or in terms of impact analysis on the stakeholders, firstly, on the company, we tell you that in government side, the company is going to firstly lose money because it's going to be making riskier and in most cases poor decisions, because the people at the bottom, most cases, do not lack the proper experience to make proper decisions. So the companies on their side are going to lose out more. Even the employees, and on the employees also, the employees are going to, most cases, they might do things like lose their jobs because they're making decisions that they're unaware that might lead to the best outcomes of the company. So in the case of employees on the government side, even them, they lose out. Whereas opposition in today's debate, we come and tell you firstly on the companies, we tell you on the companies, they're going to be able to completely smoothly run in the long run because they have a system that's in place that is managed by people at the top who know what they're doing, and they're represented by people at the top, by representing the people at the bottom who also are able to air out their views. With that panel, I believe we are showing you why we have won, and we take the debate. I rest my case.
Thank you so much for that wonderful speech. Now let's welcome the third prop speaker. Proposition team, Jibril, your third speaker, where?
Yes, actually, our team has to speak. So I am going to end mine. Am I audible?
Yeah, sure.
I'll begin my speech in three. And I think at this point of the debate, it should be my responsibility to define decision making to the lazy opposition team. Panel, decision making means making choices by identifying the decision, gathering information, and assessing alternative resolutions. Therefore, on those grounds, we all agree and believe that there are many ideas that can be contributed, but then there will be a cream of those that will be selected in favor and within the interests of a certain company. The biggest clash we have in this debate is entirely on decision making because it is what the entire opposition bench decides to side on and give us many ideas about what decision making might look like. Panel, ideally, we tell you that what actually decision making in itself looks like. It does not require 200 hours for me to send a feedback to the top management via a certain site that has been provided by a company. Therefore, we do not need board meetings every time when we are to know what are the problems workers are facing, what are the likely things that can actually be added in the company. We find it very disturbing when opposition thinks that decision making in a modern way in the 21st century looks like calling for board meetings and bringing all ground workers in order to get a certain idea from them. I told you in my second speech that ideally, companies like Amazon and Apple have been able to put in place structures where they give workers an opportunity to send in their feedback via different sites, even without meeting these individuals physically. So we think the entire idea of opposition of how people will actually shift their mindsets from what they are actually supposed to fulfill to just decision making does not actually become valid. But even if it was the case, we think nobody would actually have more desire to make more of decisions over actually their inherent responsibility that they are supposed to actually fulfill in a company. We think it is this responsibility that actually helps them provide different vast ideas to a company in order to achieve whatsoever they achieve. They still tell us that they think this kind of system creates like a distortion in the top management setup, which we ideally think it does not actually hold water. We tell you, panel, this idea of decision making does not actually look like how I can stand and say the CEO of Apple should actually leave that kind of office that he is in. We think they misquote us. We talk about things like provision of ideas on products, salaries, and other ideas that can actually be beneficial to the company, but they actually decide to not to consider this and rely on factors that we think are not even given in any of our speeches. Twin tells you that in such a setup, we think we create more of ground where people can actually be able to achieve a load, which actually does not come in their side. What they tell us still is division comes in that way simply because there are different ideas, which I've also been able to kick out. What then do we stay with? Two worlds. I tell you clearly, our world looks like a world that has communication, training of different skills, having effective communication, better relationship between the employee and the employer. And that's the kind of work that we rely on, where the biggest companies today that have developed and succeeded are actually using this kind of system in order to actually attain high levels of success. All entitled under the idea of democratization, like my first speaker said. So we think while opposition comes here and decide to talk about ideas of democracy and things of that kind, we think they actually do not stand any ground of winning this debate. What do I also describe? I tell you about the idea of transparency and accountability. These decisions are made collectively and with input from various stakeholders, which therefore means that people have an inherent attachment to these decisions. For example, if they decide that a certain quality should be produced, people will be more incentivized to actually ensure that that becomes a reality simply because they have actually been able to contribute to this kind of setup. We think then the problem that comes from opposition is they try to select a world where the top organization is what they only consider. Because the second speaker clearly says that they are against an idea of decision making. which therefore means that all associated benefits that come along decision making are not existent in their world, but rather existent in our world. We tell you that we prefer better employee and employer management kind of relationship because A, it contributes to the working rate, the productivity, the creativity, and innovative. Which of all of these actually, at the end of the day, signal us to attainment of profitability? They tell you clearly in their speeches that they want to achieve profits, which I tell you under my aims. But all this cannot actually become a reality when the world cannot make that happen. We think in a world whereby employees are given a platform to make that become a reality. It is where we actually are able to earn more profits and sustainable development of the company. They tell us that there is a risk of losing information by these workers because they've actually been included, which I tell you is not true because either way, decision making does not eliminate hierarchy existence or like the top management from taking on what they are supposed to actually fulfill. But even either way, we think there is existence of code of conduct that all these people sign to and believe in that limits them from producing or putting out some of the ideas that can actually that are not actually supposed to be put out, and therefore companies hold a bigger position to show people that can actually go against that kind of organization. So we think at this point of the debate, weighing it out, we paint what opposition looks like, a world where the top organization does not get ideas from people, but even second, they rely on what they think it is right, and therefore in their world, less profitability, less unity, and such a world does not actually achieve aims of profitability compared to a world whereby we have effective communication, clear organizational setup, where the top management and the bottom actually have a stronger bond. We think the strength of a company comes out of unity because ideas that are produced are always very brilliant ideas that can be able to outcompete the different competitors in market. If you actually stay with opposition world, you cannot actually succeed in the 21st century. I beg to rest my case and speak.
Thank you so much for that wonderful final speech. So, without wasting time, let me invite a final speaker from opposition as we wait for the reply speeches. Thank you.
Judge, I hope
Yes, you're audible.
I'm audible, dear Judge.
Yeah, we can get you, Stephen.
Okay, if I am, then I start in 3. Okay, I'm beginning in 3, 2. The team arguing in opposition has actually been team liberalism, and the team arguing in opposition, we, the negators, have actually been team radicalism. As team opposition, we've decided to build our entire case mainly on structure and promoting productivity and sustainability, specifically of the company. Now, notice the fact that the very first speaker from team opposition told you that the main goal of a company is to promote productivity and sustainability. What do we get from team proposition? The very first speaker characterized democracies from a national spectrum. She told us how democratization is all about fairness and justice and inclusivity. Now, the clash points in this major debate have been the points of inclusivity and empowerment, efficiency, employee representation, and who holds the best interest of the company at heart at the end of the day. And this is what the pre-current speaker has actually failed to point out in this entire debate and show us how their team actually achieves the best interest of the company at the end of the day, since we have both agreed on that. Now, to head into my rebuttals, the very first speaker told us that they are actually arguing for inclusivity. But my pre-current speakers, the second and the first, have actually told you that one of the negative effects of democratization of companies at the end of the day is that is that we are actually going to be having a lot of backlog when we are actually arguing for a particular aim at the end of the day. So notice the fact that we are actually arguing for representation through structure. Our second speaker told you that there is hierarchy, and there is actually a person who is representing the voices or the opinions of these employees at the very top, right? We told you that there's always a board member, for example, in a school that is actually a member of the staff, either from the non-teaching staff or teaching staff, that represents the opinions of these people at the very top. So you understand at the end of the day that we actually do inclusivity and representation of these employees better on our side than on their side, where they want it to be time consuming, and more expensive. Our second speaker clearly shows you how democratization is more expensive and time wasting. We told you in the very first case, as the first speaker of team proposition told us that they're actually arguing for improved efficiency. But we know that actually at the end of the day, when each and every person from the grassroots to the very top of the entire company is involved in decision making process, you realize that at the end of the day, it is going to be more time wasting, and it is going to be actually more expensive for the company. So we are not against equal representation. We are not against ideas of representing all the employees or having all of their opinions listened to. But what we are against is time wasting and being more expensive, and equal representation coming at the expense of efficiency and sustainability for the company, as my first speaker told you. Now realize, dear judge, that at the end of the day, what we are actually arguing for as team proposition, why we tell you that we actually have the best interests of the company held at heart, is because at the end of the day, we realize that there are actually people that we are actually following structure and hierarchy, whereas team proposition is actually following a system that is more time waste denied. Whereas team proposition is actually trying to follow a system that is going to lead us to much more backlog. We tell you, dear judge, as my first speaker and second speaker told you, that that decision making, which involves all the employees from the grassroots to the very top, is actually going to delay the process of reaching a consensus. We tell you that by the point in time where someone actually sits down with all their employees to decide or to deliberate on something that is very simple, you realize that they're going to spend more time, because each and everyone has an opinion and each and everyone wants to be heard. Whereas if we follow the system of structure and hierarchy that my second speaker actually told you, you realize that at the end of the day, each and every person is going to be equally represented, and each and every person is actually going to have their opinion heard from a person who they elected. And is that not democracy, dear judge? That is the democracy that team proposition are arguing for, but have failed to actually realize. And we realize it much better on our side. So that completely knocks out the clash of equal representation. The first speaker told you that the first speaker from team proposition told you that there's going to be misrepresentation of employees, and there's actually going to be great influence on employees at the end of the day. But we realize, dear judge, as they said, that as my second speaker told you, that democracy is actually the will of the many, the will of the majority over that of the minority. So you realize that at a point in time when some people actually choose a particular person to be the one representing their voice, then that means that the majority has spoken, and that is the democracy that team proposition is arguing about, but has actually failed to understand in this particular debate. And you realize that we achieve it better on our side. Now, the third speaker from team proposition actually failed to point out the clash points, and said that our major clash point was on points of inclusivity and actually understanding what the motion is talking about, ideas to do with democratization, right? But we keep on telling you, dear judge, that the clash points in this particular debate have been inclusivity and empowerment, right? But we tell you that through structure and hierarchy, this is where we are actually going to be receiving more inclusivity and more empowerment for our employees. And we also tell you that we are not against the idea of employee representation and employees having autonomy over their choice and actually presenting their ideas to the people at the top. But what we are saying is, let us have hierarchy and structure, because this is much better, it is less time consuming, and it is actually less expensive. So you realize that at the end of the day, we actually achieve the core aims of the company, meaning that we have the best interests of these companies at heart, rather than what team proposition tries to hoodwink you with. We tell you that the main goal of a company, denied speaker, we tell you that the main aim of a company is actually to promote productivity and sustainability. And how we are promoting productivity and sustainability in that case is that we are actually planning for a smaller group of people to actually help us with the decision making process. It's going to be faster, it's going to be more efficient, it is going to be less expensive, and at the end of the day, we are actually achieving sustainability and productivity. Team proposition failed on their burden of proof because they did not clearly explain to us beyond reasonable doubt how they achieved those particular aims. They went on and on about ideas to do with inclusivity, ideas to do with employee representation. Yes, it is your right to be heard, but at the end of the day, who is achieving what is best for the company? And we believe that we achieve this best because this is what we have been arguing for. This is why in my preamble I told you that this is a debate about liberalism vis-a-vis radicalism. And team proposition at the end of the day have actually been arguing for liberalism vis-a-vis us, who have actually been arguing, putting the idea or putting the interests of the company at heart and at the very forefront of our debate and our arguments. So the first speaker told you that they are arguing for equal denied speaker. Our second speaker continues to explain to you the negatives or the disadvantages that actually come out of decision making, starting from the grassroots or democratization and this whole ideology, right? We tell you that we are dealing away with leadership expertise, which is going to be undermined, right? Understand that actually a company which has structure means that someone who is at the very top, who is representing the rest of the employees, has leadership qualities that made that person to be where they are at the moment, right? And if you decide to have each and every person in the company actually, if you decide to have each and every person in the company having their opinions sent to the person at the very top, then you realize that at the end of the day, we're going to be doing away with the leadership expertise of these people who were elected. This is what Team Proposition failed to understand, that all their
Time out,
ideas of
please.
equal representation are coming at the expense of.
Speaker, time out.
I beg to rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let's now get into reply speeches that will be strictly 3 minutes. Let's welcome the reply speaker from OP. Thank you.
Okay, let me set my timer to 3 minutes. Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Pano, understand one thing about today's debate. This is a comparative debate. Within the debate, Proposition's main goal was to show us as to how they would achieve their goals when they actually democratize, and from all the same goals. Pano, understand one thing. In a world whereby everyone has a different view on what they believe or things that they say that this should be this, there's so many views from different people. At a point whereby Proposition comes in and tells us that this is going to promote a greater participation, but they do not tell us how this is actually going to promote. They fall out on that. But two questions that Proposition actually fails to answer in today's debate, and that is why they lose out. One, they do not actually show us as to how companies should be like, why they should legally be required to actually implement these democratic structures within their organization in order to ensure like this form of greater participation of these employees and to empower them. They do not justify that from their first speech to their last speech, and in the reply speech that is going to be too late. But then secondly, they do not answer to the goal that they failed to show us in their first speech, but then we set our goal to say that actually we want to promote sustainability and productivity. They do not show us as to how actually democratization is not going to either reduce this competitiveness of companies. So they fail on that burden then. But then secondly, understand that in the third reply speech that Proposition comes in, he brings in a new matter of how he actually tells us that decision making is something whereby people can actually have a site and then they send to the CEO or whatever it is. But Pano, understand that in their world, even though we are to take them at their best case, these are the two things that are going to raise from their world, right? Even though there is a site and people are going to send their views or their decision through via this site, nothing is going to change, because at the end of the day, these people actually decide to make this decision on their own. So they are going to just have this title of the company being democratization, of this company actually like democratizing itself and having like this greater participation. But what happens in reality at the top power is that actually people's decisions are not actually being validated and they're not being used. So what happens is they just have a picture painted out there that actually they're going to go and check that site. But rather, even though we take them at that, it's better in a world that if they want to democratize, everyone needs to sit in, say their point of view, and people actually pick what they have to pick from there. But then what we tell you from our end of the house is that the site is not going to work, and at a time whereby people have to sit and actually promote like this sort of airing out whatever they have to say, that is time consuming. And then secondly, that is like adding another backlog to their to what they already have. But then lastly, they talk about the productivity, creativity, and innovation that they all talk about. But yeah, that doesn't exist in their world at a point whereby you're not even achieving the goals of that.
Time out, please. Time out. Let me have the final speaker from with reply speech from Prop Bench.
Chair, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to start. Go. Chair, one thing we have to tell you is that we clearly apologize for their logical inconsistencies throughout the debate. So one thing we come and tell you that in order to democratize these companies, we see we're going to achieve a greater good, even what they claim to achieve from their world, we actually achieve it in a greater extent. One thing that has clearly been heated about is about the decision delay. But one thing we come and tell you that this decision making is whereby we gather and assess information from these people. We come and tell you that days back, that these people actually had this sort of system whereby these people could just come and have radical decisions made by the top people and not even interfering the others. But in a world whereby these companies are democratized, it means that people are going to be able to engage and get access to this information. Nevertheless, even though this information is actually not taken even though you just get and gather this information, that clearly means there is they actually participate in the decision making, and that is what democratization actually looks like. Opposition has this sort of school of thought that decision making actually takes years or months. But this is one thing we clearly tell you. In a appointed time, whereby we need actually these resources or this information in order to boost these companies, we're going to have valid information from these employees. Why? Because employees are actually the main people who actually work in this, because they actually know the ups and downs of the company. So the appointed time, once you get the decision from this is whereby these the people in these high positions are able to make decisions in comparison to actually their ideologies. So with that, we see that there's going to be more better decisions taken, and hence bringing about the whole idea of productivity. And from our case, once there is productivity and once there is employee engagement, since these employees are actually in the mood, it actually pushes them to actually work better. With this case, what do we actually achieve? We achieve customer satisfaction. Why? Because employees are able to engage with customers even better. So to a point in time, we see that productivity is actually achieved better from our side, and sustainability, since companies need customers in order to function. But one thing that come and contradict in their case is that people are already chosen, and these people, like the majority people in these companies have already chosen these people who are going to make decisions or take their decisions to these big people. It means that even in and itself, it means that democracy actually exists. That clearly shows that there is contradiction in their case. But training a cooperative in our case, Chair, will show you that in a world where these companies are democratized, we see that we uphold inclusivity. We see there is going to be employment, engagement, and even participation, where these employees are able to air out and challenge unfair policies and even address their issue, which was clearly not engaged from their side, and it keeps on standing. But then we go ahead and show there's going to be accountability and transparency, since there is good engagement with the managers and the employers. And Chair, with that, I would like to say that we clearly win today's debate.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for that wonderful debate. One, I must say it was an amazing run, but I'm not going to give like whole complete feedback or who has won and whatever. We are a complete written feedback is going to be given to you tomorrow. So make sure you're available and go through, cross check where you can probably improve or in regards to the round, and also make sure that there is a replay going to be sent. Maybe you can on the YouTube, they will send it in group, then check on YouTube and be able to basically go ahead and analyze yourself. Have you been making sense and what? The best way you can make yourself good is when you listen to yourself later. So make sure you replay those audios and get to analyze and judge yourself like in the best context. So, and before there's certain things I want to make right. A few comments. Let me begin with the good things that I realized. Team consistency. Like there's that kind of team consistency on both teams, and you could realize that whereas one team decided to run the other side of what the debate the info slide was not talking about, they were consistent in that, which is equally good, even though it might not have been good at the end of, like, the results will tell, but it was a better run. Like, you have to keep consistent, like, all through. Then also, in regards to, I think that was something nice. Then I'll get to down things that I felt like we need to work on. Let's get to motion interpretation now. Every time we give an info slide, it has a relationship to do with, so that it's just there for the sake, like they're trying to waste your time to read. No, you must analyze it in detail. So within the info slide, there's a lot more that was given in regards to the context of the motion. That is things to do with what is democratization in detail. So you must analyze it, and because from the info slide, you could clearly tell that it is not directly shifting power from the people on top to the people that are down, but it is one form of changing the old tradition of doing things where the people above make decisions and then have to avail them for into the people down, to a system that includes the people down into decision making. So info slides often have a lot to do with our interpretations of the motion. That is something one team chose to say that, you know what, it is, according to them, it looks like democratization is a shift of power complete with the people who are down. And then the whole bit was confused on, okay, do they have the technical ideas? Have they learned or what? Until one of the second speakers, I'm not going to mention, comes and then clarifies on what the info slide basically talks about, the aspect that it is inclusivity of the people that are at lower levels of power structure in these companies. Now, next is what do we have for speech structure? Now, whenever you're going to start speaking, make sure you have like really arranged your speech so well and so right that that as you're speaking, you have to flow. Around 2-3 speakers, you'd start something and then you feel like, wow, they're hitting the point, and then you run out, you into another point, you leave the other point. I just put question marks like, oh, what was it trying to derive at? Now, make sure you're consistent. It doesn't make sense you trying to speak on 100 things and then you don't finish them. That, like, someone who chooses to speak 10 things and then details them and like accomplishes them and shows you how best everything was rated to the debate in one or the other. Then also, the question of team burdens in terms of what the motion demands is something we really need to work on. So, but that base is going to come in tomorrow's, when we get to give you feedback tomorrow. Like, we shall detail it, written feedback, so you can be able to correct yourself. Now, lastly, please don't forget that next week we shall be having spars, 3 spars every day for the next week. So endeavor to be around and give yourself the best. Thank you so much. Unless there is any question, I beg to rest my personal case for today. Thank you so much for your participation and commitment all throughout the day. We meet next week. Any question?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I was requesting for personal feedback. Is there a way like I can reach out?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. It's okay. You can let me just get my number from the main WhatsApp group. I'm just going to text something and then you can inbox me. Any other question? Okay. That being it, thank you so much. We meet next week for more spars.
you.